Hi everyone, my name is Anne. Welcome to Art on the Creek, and we're in my home studio in Parker, Colorado. I have a treat for us today, as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. Recently, I asked our members what they would like to see in upcoming videos, and one of the biggest choices was how to make your own watercolor journal without sewing a binding. I happened to find something on Amazon that is from Lightwish, and even though you can purchase this just ready to go, I thought we could maybe make our own and repurpose some things that you might have laying around the house. This one has a nice little cover. It's vegan leather. I couldn't think of the word, vegan leather. And it has some pockets in here for some other papers or tickets or whatever if you want to take this with you. And of course, it has a pack of watercolor paper and a little place to hold your brush or pen or whatever, and it just folds like that. Really nice, good size. I thought that we could have some fun trying to make something like that, but using something we already have around the house. Shall we give it a go? Let's do it. I really love repurposing things, and this is so easy. It couldn't be simpler. All you need is an old notebook that either your kids or you are no longer using. This particular one has kind of that plastic cover. I've just cut the cover off right at the spiral, and admittedly that does make the holes a little bit close to the edge, but it's okay. I've also cut out one of the pockets because I want to have some of that storage, and you see this particular notebook has more pockets, so if that's something that interests you, save those. You can see how close the holes are to the edge, but I think it's going to be okay. And this is just going to be for me, so I'm happy to just experiment and use it, and if it falls apart, well then I will make a different one, but at least I can give this notebook a little bit of new life. Honestly, I think this was probably my daughter's notebook from elementary school, and she's now in college, so we just don't throw things away in our house. I've got some fun decorative papers here, one by Stamperia and one by Pepin. I will link to all of these things. I ended up not using either one of those. I thought that blue would be fun to use some of the By the Sea theme here for the back, but these colors are also muted, and I don't think they would look good with that bright blue. But I got to tell you, these papers are wonderful. What these books are is kind of like wrapping paper that's thicker than wrapping paper, folded into fourths and then put into a book format with a perforated edge, so you can tear them out, wrap presents, make all kinds of cool things. I have another one. Let me go get that one. Actually, I have a couple here that I really like. This particular pack is called Watercolor Pack, and I think this is from Craft Consortium. And again, I'm going to link to everything in case you guys fall in love with any of these papers and want to give them a try. These are just beautiful. I've used these. This is the Van Gogh set, and look at those irises. That's so pretty. But still, the blue on the notebook is just so bright. I don't know. I don't think it'll be a good match. I'll save these for something else. But the Vincent Van Gogh pack I love, and I've used them to cover books and journals before. It's good, thick paper. This craft paper is also really good. It's got a more of a smooth texture than that other paper. The other paper feels more artisanal. So really, it's kind of, what are you interested in? You can even use an old linen dish towel or a cotton woven dish towel that's kind of a tight weave. The jacquard dish towels work really well. Whatever you want to cover it with, denim, anything that you want to use will work, I guarantee it. You can even use fake fur if you want to. But it's really very easy to do. So what we're doing, and again, this is the back of the notebook, and I've just cut it off right at the spiral, and I just used my hand scissors to do that. Let me get out my bookbinding bin here. There are a few tools that you might want. This 5-in-1 tool is really, really helpful. It's just a good guide for you when you're making, when you're covering book pages, to make sure that you get all the edges even. It gives you enough going around so that you can fold it over very easily. You can miter corners with this, make rounded corners, and provide enough space in case you are doing a sewn binding. So it shows you in this little card here everything that you would need to use this simple little device, and it's good and heavy. nice heavy metal, so and it's got like an enamel on it, so I really like it. I'm just going to lay this up here as a straight edge to make sure that I've got this right where I want it on the paper, and then I can move this corner to the opposite end and kind of mark out where I want to cut it. The first thing I like to do is just to kind of draw a line where that book cover is going to rest, because I want to make sure that I don't move it as I'm working on it. And now I'm going to go ahead and just draw part of that line, and rather than flip it over and do this, I'm going to and trace it on the other side. What I'm going to try and do is to use a ruler. Why I chose to do it this way, I don't know, because it came out being not quite correct. But that's the straight edge there, and let me just check it against this. And you can see the line is just outside a little bit, so let me make this line the one that I want to cut with. Now when I cut my papers, I do use a guillotine style paper cutter, and I'm going to go do that right now. Finding this 12-inch craft paper is really easy to find. You can get them in scrapbooking stores, in card making stores, so you can buy by the sheet, you can buy them by the pack. You can buy them in other sizes if you like. This particular one, I like Craft Consortium because their paper is just a little bit thicker than the others, it seems. However, that could just be what I have access to in my area. So use whatever you like. Use whatever makes you happy. And like I said, even fabrics you can use. I'm just going to measure with my guide to make sure I've got this centered. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the glue on this herringbone pattern side, because I want to have the stripes showing on the back, and I want the herringbone to be on the inside back cover. So here's the glue I like to use. This is a PVA bookbinding glue. It's very, very easy to find. You could use Elmer's, you could use Mod Podge, you could use any kind of matte gel medium. There's Yes paste. You can use just about anything. I recommend using some kind of a water-soluble glue, and I'm also putting it on the back of this here. That's not really necessary, but you can. And I just wanted to show you that there's no right or wrong way to do this. And you just want to make sure that that PVA glue gets spread around evenly. And in order to do that, I recommend using a paintbrush. I like a fairly wide, flat paintbrush, and this particular one, I think I got it at the dollar store in a pack of beginner brushes. So, you know, don't use your good watercolor brushes for this. Just any kind of utilitarian brush will work. You can even use one of those the silicone scraper brushes. Those work really well. Just anything that's going to help you spread this glue around. I am nearing the bottom of my bottle of glue, and it's getting a little bit challenging for me to squeeze it out. Part of that is because my hands, I deal with some arthritis in my hands, so whatever glue you use, you know, you may not have the struggle that it looks like I'm having when you are squeezing that bottle, but normally it's really easy to do. I think it's just because it's near the end. I've had that bottle for a while. Although it hasn't dried out, it's really stayed quite nice. So you don't have to go into the margins yet on this. And in fact, I would recommend that you don't just yet, because this glue dries pretty quickly. It's got a pretty high water content, I think, but it also dries really quickly. So the next thing I'm going to do is just lay that right down there, make sure it has good contact. And I'm using those guidelines that I traced around my chipboard, that back of the notebook, as a guide as to where to place this. And then I'm going to flip it over and really smooth this down. You can use a brayer, you can use any other kind of like those pads with the handle that I don't know what they're called, that they use for printing. You can use anything you want to make this really smooth out. You just want to make sure that you've got good adherence all the way around. And now we have more fun things to do with this tool. I really love this. This is so simple and such a great invention. Normally you would have to kind of measure and add this 1/8 inch out from the corner and make sure you get your angle straight. This does it all for you. I love this little tool. It's so convenient. So I'm just drawing a line where I'm going to trim off the corners, because this is going to be kind of a mitered edge. So I've got that all drawn, and now I'm just going to come in with some regular old scissors and just snip off these corners. So you can see how there's a little bit of space left between the point of the corner of the book and where I'm cutting. You'll see how that comes into play, and it makes it so that once you get this all folded in, you don't have any exposed chipboard. So you kind of need a little bit extra there. Now, I love paper. I adore paper. I've even saved things this small. If you want to save something that small, that is great. I would love to see you make collage out of them or really have fun. If you want to save those little pieces, go ahead. And if you want to throw them away, don't feel guilty about recycling them or throwing them away. Whatever you want to do with the little pieces is absolutely fine. The fun thing about this project in this particular size from a notebook is that you do have some really good chunks left over, some decent sized pieces. And you can use those to make pockets, bookmarks, what have you. So you'll notice when I put the glue on the edge there, I wanted to make sure and touch that glue to the side of that chipboard so that when that folds up, it's going to adhere to that. Now what I'm looking for is my bone folder. And of course, I couldn't find it, so I am using a tongue depressor. Just a wooden craft stick, anything that's going to give you this ability to really push that up against the edge of your chipboard and then fold it over. The problem with using just your fingers for something like this is you will inevitably get some glue on your fingers. And it's just easier and a lot cleaner if you use a bone folder. And you can also have really a much neater look when it's all done. And I struggle with being really neat, you guys. I see a lot of these bookbinders on YouTube, and I'm pretty enamored of their skill to just do things so meticulously. That was never my strong suit, but I'm proud of myself. I did put some newsprint down. This newsprint is also ancient. I think it's left over from a pad that I had in high school, so it's pretty yellow on the edges, but hey, I never throw things away. So this is my 40-year-old newsprint protecting my art table from glue. And it's even if it got on there, it would be okay because this glue is completely water soluble. But I didn't want to have extra mess to clean up. So you'll see how I'm kind of swiping that bone folder, aka tongue depressor, starting in the center. So here, we'll go through this one step by step so you can really see. I've got the bead of glue that I go down the edge. And then I'm filling in the flange there, the part that hangs over. And now I'm going over it with a brush to make sure that everything is really spreaded around and will adhere really well. I'm going to pick up this side flap from the middle and adhere it there first. And I'm just running my finger along it. I'm kind of pressing kind of hard. I want to make sure I have that fold exactly right. And using this bone folder, tongue depressor, really works well to get that to adhere. And again, you're going to work from the middle first and then go out. It'll help you from getting any puckers. It will prevent any wrinkles. Just really make it nice and smooth. And you see those mitered corners that result. They're really nice. So we'll just do this last one here. And oh, one other thing I wanted to let you know, since I'm working with a striped pattern here, luckily things are printed very straight, so you can use the edge of your paper as your first guide when you're cutting it. But if you are working from something that has a real linear pattern and you're not sure if you've got it straight, be sure you double and triple check before you make that cut, because there's nothing that will drive you crazier than having crooked lines on a pattern on a book cover. At least that's me. That's my opinion. If it doesn't bother you, then you go ahead and make whatever you want to make. Next week, by the way, we're going to do another type of no-sew binding journal. This one is really simple, and we can just do with a lot of things that we already have around the house. Next one will be the same, but it's going to be a different style of binding. So here's where this bone folder really comes in handy. We're just going to roll it around these corners here to kind of push that down, get it to adhere. You see how I'm kind of swiping it, almost like you're filing something. You hold the bone folder with your thumb or grip it in your finger, and then really just push it down around that corner without really, changing the shape of the corner. You're just really getting that to adhere. And a bone folder is really kind of essential if you're going to be making some of these handmade journals, because you just really need that extra assist in folding. So now I want to go back to that same style of paper because I want to use the other side of it. There it is. And so I'm going to get out another sheet here, just tear it right out of there. These tear out so easily. Most of them do. I've only had one pack that was really inexpensive and it did not tear very well. I've decided I wanted the lines of the pattern to go the same direction here. And this time I'm kind of just eyeballing it. I pulled it in about 1/4 of an inch from the side and the top, and I'm just making little marks on the opposite side and the bottom as to where I'm going to cut that on my guillotine paper cutter. The other thing I really recommend that you do invest in is a guillotine paper cutter, some kind of a craft paper cutter. It doesn't have to be a guillotine style because you can have that right angle. Now I wanted the guillotine style because the angles are more precise. And the blade stays sharper. Mine is by X-Acto and it was under $40, so they're not that bad. And I really have enjoyed using it. I've cut so many things on that, and just it's so nice to get so many papers the same size. So what I'm doing is kind of pushing a place where I can see, and again, I'm using that bone folder device, the tongue depressor, to kind of push in where the holes are punched on this card, because I want to be able to see where those are. before I put this sheet of paper on. So you see, this is the inside back cover. It's just 1/4 of an inch smaller all the way around, and I just eyeballed it. You can measure, but I didn't want to. I just did an eyeball thing, and this is kind of where my hands got really tired, so I just opened up the glue and poured some on. So you really don't need too much. You know, I'm just kind of blotting it around here, and then I will go over it with that paintbrush and kind of give it a nice even coating. So you can see I've got that couple of areas there where it's really kind of heavy, so I'm just going to spread it out from those areas first. When you are spreading the glue around, it is really kind of thick, so I do recommend that you do it a little bit carefully, because it's one of those things that if you're not holding it in place or if you're brushing too fast, you can wrinkle your paper and then you just have a mess. And what if it's the last piece of paper with the pattern that you like? So do proceed with caution just a little bit on this one. And really, it almost feels like you're making a big sticker. It's so easy to do. I really love working with this glue. It's one of my favorites. I think this is my second bottle of this glue. I've used it for just about everything. And it works really great with any kind of porous material. So, okay, let me find out where those holes are again so I know what I'm doing, and we're just going to lay this on here. I do want this paper to be a little bit over to the side where those holes are, because when I end up punching through the holes, I don't want to be just on the edge of that inner paper, if that makes sense. I wanted to make sure that I have this shifted toward the holes just a little bit, because I want them to be completely covered by this paper. And then I'm just using that bone folder to kind of smooth this out and make sure it's adhered under all of the edges. And there we have the back cover of our book. And before I go on to the next step, I'm just going to make sure that I have all of the areas adhered on the corners. So see how this one can lift up a little bit? I've still got some glue in this brush, so I'm just going to kind of tuck it under there and squeeze it out and kind of just make sure that that corner is adhered. And I'm going to just check all the corners for any lifting. There we go. There's another one. We'll push that one down. And I think this one over here might need a little bit. So I'm just tucking the brush under there, pushing down and pulling the brush out, and then I will just press down. And now we've got our back cover all ready for the next step. Now, if you were making your own from chipboard, you would repeat that and do a front cover. But since I'm using this notebook, I'm going to go ahead and clean this a little bit just to make sure that there aren't any weird spots or stains on it. I'm just using water and giving it a wipe down. And again, this is kind of that plastic that was really popular in notebooks. Gosh, when did those come out? The 90s and 2000s. I think when I was a kid, we just had paper notebooks. There were some that had like a fabric in it, and it was covered in plastic. I loved back to school supplies, you guys. They were one of my favorite things in the world, and I don't know, art's just kind of a natural extension of that. So let me know in the comments, were you a back to school supply geek like I was? I loved going school supply shopping. There was nothing I wanted to do more than to label all of my pencils and all of my colored pencils. Oh my goodness. Well, now we're actually going to measure, and we have here that this is 8 inches across and I think 10 1/4 up and down. So what we need to do is just be aware of those measurements. I'm going to write them down here on my paper. I love this, by the way, being able to just write notes on the pad of paper that's protecting your table. And then we're going to subtract 1/2 inch from each of those. And what this final measurement is going to give us is the dimension for our watercolor paper that we're going to cut. So for an 8-inch book, you would cut your watercolor 7.5 inches on that measurement. I've got, I think I wrote down 9 3/4 there. That's 1/2 inch shorter than the other side. And I'm just going to check to make sure that if I cut it to that 9 3/4, that it's going to be okay and go past those holes. Because remember, these holes are already here and I want to use them. So I need to see if I need to adjust anything. And that is the measurement that I want. So that will work out just fine. I like to circle that in case I end up writing more notes and I can't remember where I left that little notation. I have found this fluid hot press watercolor paper that I'm okay about. I'm not really super crazy about it, but rather than leave it in a block and let it go unused, I know that I'll use it if I bring it in a journal and put it in my plein air kit. So I will do just that with this one. And it's got most of the sheets left. It's in a block, which means that it is adhered on both sides. This is not cotton watercolor paper. You can use whatever watercolor paper you want. This is 300 GSM, 140 pound, pretty standard. It feels like cardstock though. It's just not my favorite paper, you guys. nothing against it because it works really well for ink. So I'm looking forward to doing some line and wash on here and maybe using some Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2s. You know, just because I don't like the paper for watercolor doesn't mean I'm never going to use it. There's always a good use for a paper. And to separate your paper from a block, you just take some kind of an edge. I'm using a palette knife here, and I'm putting it in between and just slicing that gum that holds them together. That's actually very similar to the glue we're using, by the way. And we're just going to lift out these pages. I'm kind of making it like a book right now. And then we'll do the same to the other side and make sure we get all of that adhesive off of these pages. So I'm just continuing throughout and slicing these up, making sure I'm not tearing the paper underneath. That is one good thing about this book, is this particular one really tears easily from the adhesive. I've seen others that don't, so I don't know if there's some inconsistencies or what have you, but whatever paper you're using, you need to take it out of whatever it came in. And this is an excellent chipboard. It's nice and thick. Look at how thick that is. Let me pull this adhesive off here so I can show you, I guess. First, we'll do that. And you can really see how thick that is. It's almost, oh gosh, like 3 or 4 millimeters. The chipboard that I'm using is the back of a notebook, and it is really thicker than normal. It feels like it's about 17 point. You can buy different thicknesses of chipboard, or you can use a cereal box. You know, you can use whatever you have on hand. Just make it easy, make it fun, do it the way that you want to do it. I'm just figuring out which way to lay this out so that I know how to cut it, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to cut these watercolor pages. And remember, we're cutting it, that circled measurement there, a 1/2 inch smaller than what we already have. That way we can have a 1/4 inch leeway all the way around. Now this particular method that I'm showing you today will work on thicker watercolor paper. You might have to cut it a different way though if you don't have a guillotine cutter or another kind of scrapbooking type paper cutter. You can use a rotary cutter and an acrylic ruler just like you would cut something for quilting. Lots of different ways to cut, or you can take it somewhere and have them cut it for you. These are the cast-offs, and I just want to separate them here because I want to show you a 12 inch by 9 inch, and we're going to end up with a usable 6 inch by 9 inch painting size, which is a good size. Look, ready-made bookmarks. So I have a lot of leftover papers, and I will not throw those away because those will be fun to make bookmarks out of. And you just want to make sure that your pages end up getting cut very evenly. If you were to put this on a grid and lay a metal ruler down and cut it with an X-Acto knife, you can do that too. Whatever way works the best for you to cut it. I don't recommend using scissors though because it's really easy to get a wobbly line. Now for our next steps, we're going to dig back into our bookmaking kit, and I'm going to use something called an awl. AWL. I have an old wine cork that I stick the tip in just to protect myself because this is very sharp. It'll punch holes in leather, and so it'll punch holes in your skin. So be very careful when you're going through here. But the diameter of this is wide enough that all you have to do is stick that through the hole and then kind of run it around in the circle, and that really opens up that hole for you. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. It's just that it's so thick. If you needed to punch these holes initially, I recommend using a tool called a Crop-A-Dial. That's a C-R-O-P, and you will see me pull out my Crop-A-Dial here and try and put rivets on here. Although I ended up removing those because I don't have all of the parts to the rivets I thought I did. So I'm just kind of pressing down these frayed edges that come out from the opposite end, and I'm going to trim them a little bit. Just kind of neaten this up, and then I'm going to try and put the rivets in, but that part didn't work. But still, I'm going to show it to you because you can see what a Crop-A-Dial looks like. The one I have is by a company called We Are Memory Keepers, and these have been around forever. You guys, you probably are familiar with them if you are anywhere adjacent to the crafting community. They're great for making holes and rivets and things. You can put them in all kinds of thicknesses. So this is a good tool to have if you need to punch holes in thicker watercolor paper. For instance, if you are using a 300-pound 640 GSM, then you might definitely want to get one of these and have them on hand, or some other kind of a heavy-duty punch. Any kind of a heavy-duty awl or a hole punch would work well for you. I'm kind of fiddling around here with rivets because I thought I would put rivets in the holes, but as it turns out, I don't have the right parts. For some reason, I only have the fronts of the rivets. I don't have the backs, and right now this is a hot mess over here, so I'm just going to let you see how I put the crocodile away. I'm even struggling with that. It's like it's this really hard puzzle. It goes the other way. There you go, girl. You got it. It's kind of cool how it all fits in here, and I like that there's room for the rivets, but I only had the rivets with the posts. I didn't have any of the bases, and what I did ended up not working. So what I will tell you is this: if you decide to punch holes in your cover, make sure that you have all the parts to the rivets that you need if that's what you're doing, or just leave them as holes and go from there. Now I've opened up my boxes of crafting treasures to play with here, and these are really cool. These are little paper key rings that you can get at any office supply store, but I like it as a way to label the journal. I've also got a little charm down there that I want to use, but it turned out that the hole is too small for that charm. But first I thought I would kind of just put this on the keychain just so I don't lose it, and then a key tag rather, and then we'll go forward from there. But these little paper key tags are so fun, and they've got a big childhood memory for me. My dad, when he was a principal at the elementary school, he had a big peg wall of all these keys to every door in the school, and you know how cool I thought that was. Every key had one of these little tags on it, and it told you what door it opened. So I'm going to use this type of labeling system to specify what's in this particular journal that I'm making. So let me just set these things aside here, and I've pulled out some really fun linear washi tape. This is actually not washi tape, it is PET tape, which is the same kind of tape that you would find, I think, in like a packing tape, like a clear packing tape. So let's get the cover off of this roll. It's a brand new roll. I saw these on my Instagram feed and I fell in love with them. They're just kind of a big line of tape that is a mountain scene. I got some other landscape scenes on there too, and they've got this other little piece of tape holding it all down. So let me just pick that off here and get this open. I like that this is a PET tape because I think it might adhere better, and I want to cover that trademark, or excuse me, the brand name in the lower right. So I want to make sure that I scoot the design over to where it's going to cover that, and see, it's just a nice little mountain scene, which is very fitting for Colorado. So I think that's a good enough of a cover, and I will clip it right there. And then we'll just kind of lay this down. And I think the notebook says Stellar on it, which is, of course, a wonderful thing to call yourself. If you're a stellar artist, I think that's great. But I wanted something a little more plain. So if you want to cover up any kind of logos on your notebook, a tape is a great way to do it. Any kind of decorative tape. And of course, you can paint on top of it too. This plastic I wasn't too sure, and frankly, I don't know how well this is going to stick on here, but I can always go back and glue it down if I need to. This is just a really quick, easy way to decorate something, and I like that it kind of goes with this really intense blue. Let me just get it laid on here to where it's not sticking on my fingers, and then I can trim that little piece off of the other end. So I'm just going to adhere this really carefully, making sure that there's no creases, and then I'll rub it down with my thumb. You could also use the bone folder for that if you wanted to, and there's a little bit more tape that I have to pick off of here. That's where the beginning of the roll adhered onto the remainder of the roll. I got most of it off. And now I'll just use my scissors to clip this off. And I'll set that over here. There's a little flange of tape on here, but I just want to, I can't get it off easily enough. So I think what I'm going to do is just save this little piece of tape and just set it on the backing here. There we go. I'll set it on the backing and just save that for later. So now as I'm looking in this hole here, you can see, if you can see, the little tiny bit of the tape expands over the edge of the hole. So what I'm going to do is to come in with my X-Acto knife and just kind of ream this hole a little bit to trim off that little bit of tape that's still sticking over the hole. Now, if you had a hole punch, you could do that. As long as it was sharp enough, you could do that and slice through that to make the hole nice and clean again. But this method works really well with an X-Acto knife. So that's what I wanted to do there. There. Now that is it. That's all I'm putting on the cover of my journal. Just that piece of tape. Still getting some of the gummy goo off of it. But I just want to keep this one really simple. So you can decorate the cover of your book however you like. Now on to the assembly. I'm just checking to see where these holes lie to make sure that my hole punch, my regular office supply store hole punch, is lined up correctly for these holes, and it is. One thing I did check when I was lining that up is where the bottom of that pocket hits on the ruler guide that is on the hole punch, and I just want to be sure. So I'm double and triple checking my measurements here to kind of make sure that I've got this set up the way I want it. And I think what I'm going to do is draw a line on here to really give myself a strong guide as to where I want to place these punches. And since I do want this to be so accurate, I've gotten out some binder clips, just again, a simple office supply. I'm making sure that these pages are really together very well. I want to make sure that they're all in line and really lined up. So I'm going to put one clip on to hold the pages together. And then I know that's a little bit off camera, but there we go. I'm trying to make sure that the ends of the page extend beyond the hole on the top and the bottom, because this is cut kind of close. And the reason that this is cut close is because I'm repurposing. When you're making your own, you can punch your holes a little bit closer in and make it more like that light wish example that I showed earlier. You can use any kind of hole punch that you like. I just want to double and triple check and make sure that that's going to be okay. So I'm measuring how much overlay I have on the top and bottom and seeing if I need to scoot it one way or the other. So let me get that all adjusted and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that I know I've got it exactly where I want it, I've got my clips on there and I'm just making a mark down the center of each hole so that I know where to line this up on the hole punch. So this will serve as an initial guide. It's really not strong enough of a line to use as your all-purpose guide, but at least getting that first sheet in and punched, then you'll know exactly where it falls on the grid that is provided on that hole punch. So there's really guides all over the place for you. That little line that I just made on the edge is just to help me find where this hole is going to hit on the ruler so that I know where to punch each consecutive sheet, because these are thick enough that I can only get one in at a time. At the base of this hole punch, there is an engraved guide that is a ruler, and I love that it's marked at least to the 1/4 inch, so I can be sure using those little lines that I drew on the edge of the papers and noting where that bottom edge of the paper falls, that I can be sure that I'm getting each one of these punched in the exact same location. So you can see I've got it lined up there at the bottom where I need it, and then I'll just punch down. And it's so easy to do. As soon as you have your guides and your measurements in place, you don't need to worry about a thing. Just go ahead and punch it and you're good to go. Well, I've got them all punched and all the holes line up. Let's cross our fingers and say a prayer to the journal gods to make sure that the holes line up with the two covers, with the front cover and the back cover. Here is something that you can purchase, and these are really convenient. They're notebook rings. Granted, the ones that I have, I only have this one size. You could use some that are much smaller, but I love the jewel tones that they are. They come in gold, purple, green, red, and blue, I think. And the blue would be lovely on this particular notebook. Now, I will be the first to tell you, I wish these were a little bit smaller. But for demonstration purposes, this is exactly going to work just fine, except for they won't fit in the rivets. So I'm going to have to take these rivets off and then I'll be right back. So you see, the only case that I didn't measure first is where I had a problem. But the rivets are easy enough to get out. I'm just using a flat screwdriver. You could also probably use a palette knife. And I'm just kind of lifting them out. They didn't adhere in here very well anyway because I didn't have the correct parts. So this is turning out to be really simple. It's not tearing the paper. Everything's working just great. So let me get these out and then I'll show you how we put it all together. Here's the fun part, and honestly, it couldn't be simpler. You just open these rings and start at the back and start feeding things in there. I've got all of the paper stacked up here together. The holes line up so nicely. We'll get that in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the other two rings while it's open. You know, the one good advantage, though, to having these larger rings is if you wanted to add more pages to your journal, you sure could. It would be very easy to do. Keeping the journal at a smaller size, though, I think would be beneficial to have smaller rings just because the pages would kind of lay a little neater. But these larger rings certainly don't bother me, and they're not going to be a deterrent. Just want to get everything through here and line that up. There's the final page stack. Come on, you can get in there. And now let's put our cover on. And just so simple. It's just a reused notebook. And I love that because, to be honest, we have a lot of school supplies. Up in my nightstand, I still have the pair of scissors for my son, who is 35. I have his scissors from when he was in 2nd grade, and I use them to cut little strings off of clothing and cut tags off clothing because they're still good scissors. I don't throw things away. Now here's where I'm going to find out that the charm is just not going to work. But see, my idea is to put this tag up here on the upper ring, and that fits just fine, and then stick that charm on there as well, but oh, it won't go in. So I bet you can get these rings in different diameters, and then you can put all the charms on them that you want. This is just a Tim Holtz set of charms, I believe. So let me just put this charm away, and then we will show you the final journal. I feel like I have a confession to make, though, about the needles and thread that you obviously see out. That was a different direction that I was going to go, and I ended up going this way. So let's just stick with this binder method for now, and I will show you the string method another time. But what I wanted to tell you is on this size paper, you can do 5x7s, you can do 6x9, an awful lot of options. And then this little key tag is so cute. I can put the year on there, or a place that I went. Maybe I'll take this traveling with me. And you know, another good way to store these would be to hang them from a little hook from that binder. So these are really just so fun to do. Very sweet, very simple. If you don't like this cover, of course, you could cover your own and make it whatever design you like. I chose not to add the pen holder on this one, but you certainly could. You could glue some elastic on there and put it under your backing paper, or you can get clip-on loops. And I will put a link to some of those in the description below in case you're interested in adding that little device to hold your pen. But this is just one way of how I make my own watercolor journals without doing a sewn binding. You don't need that many supplies. They're very fun, very easy to do. You can get a bunch of friends together and make them and really enjoy those watercolor books of paper that are just sitting on your shelf. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in next week and we'll do another kind of no-sew binding, and have fun making those journals. We'll see you next time. Bye now.